Bloody hell, James. You really didn't spare us. I'm going to start with something very lovely. 5 years ago, Bev Jackson and I were getting nervous and excited. On the 22nd of October 2019, we held the very first meeting of a top-secret organization, soon to become an internationally despised hate group called LGB Alliance. Bev's here in the front row, and I think I'd like her to stand up and just say how proud I am of what happened 5 years ago, and that we have survived for 5 years, and it's now 2024. And of course, we kicked the ball. We expected somebody else to pick it up. Sadly, they didn't. Here we are 5 years later, but now we do have wonderful chair of trustees, board of trustees. We are a registered charity. We now have 3 employees, and we are working very hard to get back to homosexualizing society and de-queering it. When I was younger, I played lacrosse. In fact, I was so good at lacrosse, I represented northern universities. Anyone else in the room play lacrosse? One person. It's a niche sport. Anyway, the reason I say that is because on a lacrosse field, there's no painted edges. And our little tagline was, no boundaries, play lacrosse. And that was supposed to enthuse us. No boundaries, you see. I never expected no boundaries to mean that we should be encouraging people to have sex with animals or children. And that, to me, is what queering society is about. The biggest threats that I see of queering society are definitely to children. I'm also appalled to say to animals, to women, and of course, the bit that I'm going to speak about is that it's my view that queer theory has a very specific goal, which is to remove homosexuality from society. I'll just repeat that. To remove homosexuality from society through changes in the law and forced medicalization. I repeat, this is one element because queering is a multi-headed beast. But I want to talk about what I call my triptych. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I've been bleating on about this. If we look around the world, there are 3 pillars, 3 vital pillars that hold up queer theory. One is gender self-ID. This is a tool that allows any man to become a woman and basically get, I think Helen Joyce has said this, an access all areas pass for the rest of his life. No physical changes are needed, and we await the ruling of the Supreme Court in the UK next month to see whether men with a GRC here in the UK, a gender recognition certificate, really are women and lesbians by nature of holding that piece of paper. That is what will be decided in the Supreme Court, and the money is on that the judges may well uphold that. So I and every other lesbian will be told that a man with a gender recognition certificate is a lesbian, and I have to get on with it. As Sadiq Khan says, we're queer, get on with it. So we await that with interest. We also await it with nervousness, given that Labour has promised to make getting a GRC much easier, because we must be kind. The second pillar is implementing a ban on conversion therapy. And again, we're worried. We heard this last week that the Labour government has announced Ray Collins in the Lords and Nia Griffiths in the Commons are going to be responsible for seeing through yet another ban on conversion therapy. So yet again, we have to fight back. But this law is essential. Why? Because it stops people like James from doing his job. It stops what Hilary Cass has recommended, that children who are confused need holistic talking therapy. Now, you'd think, why would people want to ban this? The only answer that I've been able to come up with so far is that the adult autogynephilic men, if you don't know that word, congratulations, and I'm sorry, you're going to have to look it up and find out what it is. But there are many adult men who get a thrill from dressing as women, a sexual thrill, but they refuse to own up to that fetish, and instead they have developed a narrative of the story of a child being born in the wrong body. And therefore, they need this narrative in order to retain their own respectability. We will be fighting that ban with everything we have, and we encourage you, please, do not see this as a niche issue. This is vital to the health and the safeguarding of another generation of children. Then there's hate speech laws. These are absolutely key to limiting anyone's ability to challenge the narrative that a man can be a woman. Thank you, J.K. Rowling, for such powerful messaging on X last year that the Scottish hate legislation appears to have crumbled into dust. She made a laughingstock out of a totally idiotic, unworkable piece of legislation. Yet again, we have to say thank you to J.K. Rowling for everything she puts out in this fight. Activists around the world follow the handbook, which was produced by Denton's and Thomson Reuters Foundation a few years back. The idea is that you stay under the radar, keep any tricky legislation under the radar, such as self-ID, such as conversion therapy, such as, hey, self-ID's just gone into law in Austria. Nobody even knew it was there. It was buried in a sea of regulations about the civil service. That is classic Denton's behavior. So what's happened is that maximum damage has been caused around the world with no opposition at all. Until about 2015, when some people noticed what was going on. The wickedness and the success of this ideology lies in the utterly shameless use of former gay, lesbian, and bisexual groups to promote it. Has there ever been a group more involved in driving its own destruction? Every single LGBTQIA+ group across the world is driving the erasure of homosexuality. How can that be? But I want to finish. There's lots more examples, but I'll just wrap up quickly on the fact that all global multinational NGOs, parliaments, etc., except in Turf Island, are happily driving this in the English-speaking world. But I have one piece of good news, which is, and I think this is an extraordinary thing, a presentation by the state of Alabama, the Attorney General, as an amicus curiae in the case of the United States of America versus the Attorney General for Tennessee. It sounds rather boring, doesn't it? I can assure you this is the document that's made me happiest in the last 5 years. I recommend you Google it and read it. Just one example is that it takes down WPATH, which has been driving the medicalization of kids. It takes them down and says the emperor has no clothes. Just one example of how idiotic WPATH is. They recommend castration as medically necessary for children who identify as eunuchs. Shall I leave it at that?